Bonjour and welcome to Wahsa Distance Education Center's radio Zoom classes. This is SVN3E, Grade 11 Workplace Science, and I'm the teacher, Bronwyn Slate. If you'd like to participate live today, you can call the Wahsa studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017. You can listen on the radio at 91.9 FM and also on the television at Bell Express View Channel 972. You are always welcome to join me live through the Zoom link, which is available from me, your teacher, and also your DEC. Our classes are scheduled from Monday through Thursday from 10 till 11 in the morning, and we are in our 7th week of our 9-week course. You definitely should be submitting work at this point. So a reminder, the key questions are listed at the end of each of your IL lessons. You need to do all of them. Some are check your understanding questions, some are activities, and some are review questions. Please explain your ideas and thoughts in complete sentences and make sure you're actually answering the question that is being asked. You can do this by hand or electronically. If you're going to do it by hand, you're welcome to write in your workbook. It is yours to take notes or to write in, but the spaces for the review questions in particular are not very large, so I strongly encourage you to write on a separate piece of paper in order to hand in your work in a clear way. If you're going to hand it in electronically, PDF, Word, and Google files are the easiest ones for us to access. Google Doc files everyone has access to through their NNEC email address, and we're happy to walk you through how to do that if you need help. If you need to use a different type of file, most likely it is fine. Just let us know so we can make sure we can open it. So how do you submit your work? There's 3 different methods. The first is to send your work in electronically. If you've done it by hand, you can scan it with a device. The Apple devices have a Notes app that comes with it for free, and the Android devices have a Google Drive app that comes with it for free. So you can use those to scan if need be. If you need to take pictures, that's fine. They're just scanning it are smaller files and a little bit easier for us to manage. Then you can send it to studentwork at nnec.on.ca, and you need to CC it to John, who is the course marker now. His email address is jstradiotto@nnec.on.ca. The second method is to drop your work off in Sioux Lookout at our location at 74 Front Street. We're the bright red building next to the post office, and we have a small white mailbox next to our side entrance. We are not yet open to the public, but hopefully soon. For now, just continue to put your work in that mailbox and we'll get it back to you as soon as we can. The third option is to hand your work into your DEC. Your DEC can either send your work through the Express or fax it to 807-737-1732 or toll-free fax to 1-800-463-7852. If you'd like to connect with me through social media, both my Facebook and my YouTube channel are under the name B Slate Wahsa. If you friend me on Facebook and subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'll get notifications every time I upload one of our lessons. All of our radio Zoom classes are recorded and uploaded to YouTube under a playlist called SVN3E, and all of our supplementary videos that are available on YouTube are also listed there so you can access them from their primary sources. Science is really visual. I incorporated as many videos, diagrams, charts, graphics, illustrations that I can in order to really help understand what it is that we're talking about. So I strongly encourage you to access the videos, either joining me live through Zoom or accessing the YouTube videos on your own time. If you do not have access to reliable internet, this is completely understandable. So please just let us know and we can send you a copy of all of our recordings. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us here at Wahsa. We are here to help. If you want to talk directly about the course material as according to these videos, please contact me. My email address is bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca, and my Facebook is bslatewahsa. If you want to talk about something related to the assignments or marking, contact John, and his email address is jstradiotto@nnec.on.ca. You can call us both at the main office at 807-737-1488. Extension 2209 is my extension. 2210 is John's extension. You can also call us toll free at 1-800-667-3703. John's office hours are Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 3:30, although he takes lunch from 12:30 to 1:30 and is not available then. I think it's really important to position myself within the context of this course, as my educational experience shapes how I teach. I have white settler ancestry. I have white privilege, and this has shaped how I experience education, making it easier for me and I'm having less barriers than other folks. I recognize this, and while I cannot change that, I continue to work towards disrupting this cycle and making changes to our education system. I live in Northwestern Ontario on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe people, and I work to incorporate this culture and knowledge into our science courses. As an educator, I have lots to learn and unlearn, and this is a lifelong journey that I'm committed to, though I will make mistakes. Our textbook is also Eurocentric, meaning that it centers the white experience in both the communities that it showcases and also the scientists that it refers to. It ignores Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis knowledges and experiences, and this is problematic and disappointing. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find another resource, and when I'm no longer responsible for this course at the end of term 1A, I will not be able to, it will not be my job and my priority to find this. Hopefully, Wahsa will continue to look for more meaningful resources to provide students authentic experience.
All right, so we are in Unit 5, where we're talking about making work safe and buildings energy efficient. So we've talked about how we as humans have modified our environments, particularly with the places that we work and live, building buildings and really changing the environmental space for our own needs. And that means that we have responsibilities about how we are respecting and treating the environments around us and how we're dealing in those work environments. So this is what this unit is about. Today in particular, our lesson is number 17, where we're dealing with workplace hazards. So at the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify and describe some common workplace hazards, biological, chemical, and physical. You'll be able to describe the methods of minimizing risks in the workplace and at home. So the success criteria, you know that you've met those learning goals is because you can describe biological, chemical, and physical workplace hazards, and you can explain how to minimize risks at home and at work. So just sort of positioning us a little bit, as anyone who has spent time caring for young children, life can be full of hazards. We all know this. So unwatched babies and toddlers often put things in their mouths that can make them sick, choke, or poison them. They show no fear of objects like cars that move, or water, or electricity. They behave like this because they do not suspect that these things can hurt or kill them. So people in work environments do not have parents and other caregivers to watch out for them, which is hopefully what happens for our young little people. Yet, as well, workplaces often hold unsuspected hazards and dangers. So we need to learn about them so that we can keep ourselves safe as well as our coworkers. So first, we're going to talk about some types of hazards. So biological hazards are those that can cause diseases. So the diseases are caused by pathogens like bacteria, viruses, single-cell organisms called protozoa and fungi, which we've talked about before. One biological hazard is Listeria bacterium, which we've also talked about before. This pathogen caused a deadly listeriosis outbreak in Ontario in 2008. And this was at a factory, at a meat processing factory, and then made the people in the factory, people who consumed the meat, sick, as well as I think the people in the area. And I believe that 7 or 8 people died by the time that they had it under control. So that's where it started, was in a workplace. Then also the Salmonella bacterium is another common pathogen. It is found naturally in the environment and in the intestines of poultry and other animals. Improper food handling and cooking can allow it to contaminate food. people who eat such food often come down with food poisoning, which we've talked about. So work environments at risk for biological hazards include restaurants, food processing plants, dairies, farms, hospitals, veterinary clinics, pet stores, and doctors' offices. So there's very many places that we can come in contact with biological hazards. So there are these, in terms of their Ontario Food Premise Regulation, there are 3 different signs that you may see on a business or organization if they have not passed the health unit's inspection. So there is the green pass one, and it might look slightly different depending on the organization, the like municipality, if it's Toronto or if it's Northwestern Ontario, like so it's under the Northwestern Health Unit or wherever they might have, they'll have different logos and things, but generally the same thing is that we have the pass, which is going to be green, which is substantial compliance with the Ontario Food Premises Regulations. They've passed the health inspection to make sure that there's no biological hazards that are going to risk the health of either the workers or the customers. Then we have conditional pass, which there's significant non-compliance with the Ontario Food Premises Regulation. So they need to do some adjustments. They need to fix some things, and they're going to have another inspection to come to make sure that they have passed, but they haven't shut them down yet. They're giving them a chance to improve. The health inspector is. And then we have closed. So the conditions represent an immediate health hazard to the public. So this red sign that says closed means that there's something that is going on in this workplace that is going to make people sick. And so they need to be dealt with before it's appropriate to reopen. So most biological hazards can be avoided. One way to do this is to keep the work environment clean, super important. Another way is to inspect at-risk areas and operations frequently to make sure that pathogens are not present. The third way is to sterilize and pasteurize substances in which pathogens can breed. So milk and potting soil, for example, are both pasteurized to kill bad bacteria. So there's various ways that we can deal with biological hazards by just being clean and careful to make sure that we are not being exposed to such pathogens and things that could make us sick. All right, so now we have chemical hazards. So chemical hazards are dangers posed by chemicals that have toxic or harmful effects on the body. The effects may be acute, so immediate, or chronic, which is long-term. The danger may be in the form of mists, fumes, vapors, gases, liquids, dust, or solids. So there's lots of different ways that chemicals can be harmful. Thousands of different chemicals are used in various kinds of workplaces. So it's all around us, something to be really quite educated about so that you really know how to keep yourself safe. These chemicals may be used to process or make products or to make other chemicals. Not all chemicals are toxic and harmful, but we need to know the difference. We can't assume one way or the other. However, some can have severe and acute effects on health. So this is why it's really important to know what you're working with. One example is chlorine, which is a very poisonous yellow-green gas, and it's used to make bleaching agents for paper as well as in household bleach. So chlorine is something that we use, but it is a really poisonous when it is in gas form. Chlorine is also used to make plastic, solvents, and pesticides. Very low levels of chlorine are also added to drinking and bathing water to kill pathogens. So it's something that we even consume as we put it in our water. But again, if it's a gas, it is really, really poisonous. So by themselves, low levels pose very little risk to health, and health benefits they bring are very high. So it can be really a good thing, but it also can be really hazardous. So negative effects from other chemicals may take years to show and be chronic. So sometimes it's not like it's an instant thing that you're just like, oh, this was a bad thing to come in contact with. It may show up later in life. An example of this is silicosis, a serious respiratory disease. It is inhaled by inhaling silica. dust. Pure silica is mined to make fine ceramics and laboratory glass. Impure silica is also a common byproduct of many other mining operations. So something that's you need to be careful about not breathing in. So here are a list of common workplace chemicals and where they might be used and the hazard level. So in the construction industry, we have hydrochloric acid, hydrofluoric acid, and calcium hydroxide are all very common things to have in construction, and they all have high levels of hazard. So they are very dangerous. But within cleaning concrete, they're used to clean concrete, to clean brick and etching glass, and to make cement. So they are used frequently. You just need to do it safely. So then in farms and nurseries, pesticides and fertilizers, which we've talked about before, are chemicals that are often used. Pesticides have a high hazard level, though fertilizers have a low to medium level. Pesticides are for controlling disease, so it makes sense why they'd have a high hazard level, because their purpose is solely to kill things. Whereas fertilizers are help to boosting plant growth, so not as hazardous. Within the health services and veterinary clinics, there are drugs and sterilizing agents. Both are very high in terms of hazard level, as drugs are for treating diseases and the sterilizing agents are for killing pathogens. Both are really will affect your body significantly. Resource extraction, so this is like mining or drilling or logging, taking resources out of the earth. So we need to use that. They use explosives and fuels. Explosive has a high hazardous level and fuels are medium to high level. So for explosives, this is for like breaking rock or log jams. Fuels for vehicles, heating, fuels that we use all the time, as we know. And then finally, manufacturing is the industry, and they use sulfuric acid, solvents, and petrochemicals. So sulfuric acid has a high hazard level and it's for cleaning metals. Solvents has a low to high, so it really range depending on the situation, how much you're using, and can't think of the word, how strong it is. So this is for cleaning or making solutions. And petrochemicals also has a low to high, again, depending on how strong it is, for plastics, oils, paints, and dyes. So various things that we do that are that we rely on fairly frequently has various hazardous levels, lots high hazardous levels for the people who are working in those industries. So chemical hazards can be minimized with proper care and training. Staff should be thoroughly trained in the safe use and disposal of the chemicals. The chemicals should only be kept in approved containers. These should be clearly labeled as to the contents, the dangers, and first aid procedures. The chemicals should be locked in safe storage cabinets when not in use, and only a few trusted people should have access to the keys to those cabinets. When no longer needed or after their expiry date, the chemicals should be disposed of according to local, provincial, and federal regulations. Another option is to employ a licensed chemical disposal handler. So chemicals, as we saw, are used in lots of different workplaces and are important for various things that we use. And so they can be used safely. You just need to be trained appropriately. So if you are working in an environment that you're using chemicals to some degree, however it is, you need to be trained how to do it safely. That's super, super important to be trained how to use the tools that you're using safely. All right, and then we have physical hazards. So physical hazards are those that pose a direct threat to your body. Most work environments, even offices, present one or more physical hazards. These hazards may not look dangerous. For example, a wet floor, a loose carpet, a misplaced chair, all present physical hazards that can cause serious injury. Some environments present many physical hazards, those that involve working at heights or with heavy loads or sharp objects or with high noise or vibration levels are some examples that have various physical hazards. So many of these environments involve factory or outdoor work. So there's lots of different places. Many of us, pretty much if you're in a workplace, there's going to be some sort of physical hazard. Some to the more extreme, if you are working on a hydro truck and you're going up in the bucket and working in electrical lines, that's one kind of, you know, there's various hazards there. Or if you're working in a train yard, that's going to have different hazards. Or if you're working in a school, there's different hazards there. So it really depends on your environment and what you need to be cautious of. So factory tasks, farming, and fishing often involve working with heavy loads and powerful machines. Fishing carries the added risk of working on wet, slippery, and shifting surfaces and all sorts of weather. Working on airport tarmacs may mean exposure to high noise levels with every takeoff. Most construction jobs present a variety of physical hazards, including noise. The dangers of physical hazards can be minimized with proper safety training and equipment. Again, training is super, super important. Equipment is super important. We can deal with these things, but we just need to have proper training and safety equipment. Trainers must inform staff about all known hazards. They must show them how to best protect themselves or to use safety equipment. They must also check to be certain that workers are following proper safety procedures. So it's partially on the responsibility of the employer to make sure that you are trained as a worker to be safe. And then it's the responsibility is also on the worker to be safe, and also to you can also refuse work if it is not safe. That is the law. You don't have to do unsafe work. You have a right to refuse it. That's really important to know. All right, so now you can do the key questions on page 138, the check your understanding questions. They are 1 and 2. Okay, so we know what the hazards are some of the hazards. We don't list every single one, but the ideas of what the hazards are. So how do we minimize the risk? So the best protection about hazards is a proper attitude. This means that every employee puts safety first in mind and refuses to allow others to behave in unsafe ways. So it's really important we can have all the rules in place, we can have all the materials and the safety gear, but if people aren't following the rules, if people are not caring about safety, if they just kind of oh, nothing's going to happen to me, that doesn't matter what any of the policies or procedures are, people are still going to get hurt. People are still going to get sick. So it's really about everybody believing that safety is important. That's what our best defense is. So one particular strategy, so beyond this, what are the things that we can do beyond having a positive attitude and a safe attitude? So we have mapping the hazard location, so knowing where the hazards are in your workplace. So protection begins with knowing which hazards are where in the workplace. A good way to record this information is to make a map of each work site. The locations of all hazards are then plotted on the map along with input from employees. Abbreviations or numbers are used to identify each hazard type and its risks. These are listed in a key or legend on the map so that we know what we're talking about. So here is one example of a building as a hazard map. So we can just look at it and we can say, okay, here is the front desk. There's elevators, a storage room, fuse box, more storage room, office rooms, stairwell. So we have codes. So we have indoor air quality in the public spaces, being aware that it's potentially lower indoor air quality. We have chemical agents stored in the storage rooms, CA. We have biological hazards in the storage room, in this back storage room. We have physical hazards in the fuse box, in the elevator, on the stairs. So those are all just gives you a general idea of what to be concerned about, and then what you don't need to be concerned about. So that can be really helpful in each of your environments. I don't think I've ever worked in a place that has a map like this or shows me a map like this. So maybe there is something, but it isn't something that I've seen as a worker. I have not worked as a teacher. Most of my life I've worked in schools. So it might be slightly different if you're working on a construction site or in something that is a little bit more labor intensive. I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I don't know if people actually implement it. So another method of keeping people safe is knowing the material hazards. So by law, most materials that pose health and safety hazards must bear standard symbols that identify their risks. 2 sets of symbols are chiefly used for this purpose. All people who use or are exposed to hazardous materials should know what these symbols mean. They should know and follow proper safety procedures when working with these materials. In case of an accident, they should know how to administer first aid specific to them. They should also understand spilling these materials on soil or in water or releasing them into the air may also cause harm to the environment at large. So the first system is the hazardous household product symbols. So the hazardous household product symbols, or HHPS, are used to alert people to the hazards of consumer products like oven cleaner. So each symbol consists of one of 4 icons enclosed in either an inverted triangle or an octagon, or diamond even. The inverted triangle means that the container holding the product may explode if heated or punctured. And the octagon means that the product inside the container is dangerous. So the hazard level, really, it can be at multiple, this is what your textbook says, but there's multiple levels. So the octagon, the stop sign is stop. This is really, really dangerous. The diamond is warning, not as dangerous, but still concerning. And the triangle is cautious. As a math teacher, it drives me nuts to say inverted triangle in your textbook, because a triangle is a triangle. There's no up or down to a triangle. But anyway, a triangle with generally it is situated such that the flat side is at the top and the point is at the bottom. Okay, so let's look at what these signs are. A product can have more than one. It can have one up to 4 of all 4 of these signs on it, depending on what the product is. So first we have corrosive. So the corrosive symbol looks kind of like a skeletal hand inside a beaker. The beaker is generally black, or if the symbol is a color, it might be red or something. The same color as what the sign is. And then the hand is generally white because it's skeletal. So again, danger in an octagon, warning in a diamond, and caution in a triangle. So what corrosive means is that it can burn skin, eyes, or respiratory tract. It also can burn your throat and stomach if you swallow it, and it can corrode metal. So examples are toilet boy cleaner and oven cleaner. So these are things that you probably have in your home. I know I do. So precautions are to do not allow to contact with your skin or clothing. So wear gloves, goggles, face mask, avoiding breathing these products in. If you do come in contact with the product, rinse with lots of water immediately and keep these containers sealed. These are the sorts of things that you definitely need to keep away from children and pets and vulnerable populations because they can be really harmful. All right, our second symbol is flammable. So our image is that we have flames inside of our octagon, diamond, or triangle. So this means that the product or its fumes, so it could just be just the fumes of it, which is important to note, will catch fire easily if it's near heat, flames, or sparks. So it's not like you just have to burn the product directly in order for this to be flammable. It's that it can catch on fire really easily if it's just close to heat. So gasoline is one example. So you need to keep it away from heat. Know how to use the fire extinguisher properly. Have a fire extinguisher properly in your home and in your workplace where you know what it is, how to use it. Use the ventilation to keep the fumes from being trapped, and store away from heat. Our third symbol is explosive. So we have a image of probably something that seemed originally was circular and now is exploding out, is what our diagram looks like inside of our 3 different symbols. So the meaning is that it can explode if it is heated or punctured. So flying pieces of metal or plastic can cause serious injuries, especially to the eyes. So if whatever is the substance that is inside the container, if it explodes, then there's going to be projectiles from the container that it exploded. It can also corrode metal. I think that's probably a typo from me copying and pasting my slides. My bad. Sorry about that. A spray paint in an aerosol container is one example. Pretty much anything in an aerosol container is explosive. So precautions: handle it carefully, do not drop or heat it, don't mix it with anything else, and have proper storage is important. And then our final hazardous household product is poison. So we have a skeleton, a skull with a crossbones behind it is the symbol for poison. So it could be fatal if swallowed or inhaled. This includes licking, eating, drinking, and sometimes smelling the products could cause illness as well as death. So windshield wiper fluid and antifreeze are examples. So do not allow contact with skin or clothing. Wear gloves, goggles, face masks. Do not breathe in the fumes. Wash your hands after using. Do not ingest these products. If you do, call poison control or 911 immediately. So those are the four for the hazardous household product symbols, which are probably in things that you have around your home. This second system is the workplace hazardous material information system symbols, which is also known as WHMIS. So WHMIS symbols are used to alert people to hazardous materials used mainly in the workplace. So these ones are more focused on the workplace, whereas the last ones were the household ones. If you work, pretty much every workplace that I've worked in, I've had to do WHMIS training. So they are part of the Canada's National Standard for Chemical Classification and Hazard Communication. This standard makes these symbols mandatory on all products containing controlled materials. It also means that material safety data sheets describing the material risk must be provided with every product sale. There are 8 WHMIS symbols. Each shows a different icon enclosed by a circle. The icons represent different hazards. The hazards are classed from A to F depending on the type of hazard. So this is, again, training that most likely in most jobs you are going to have to do at some point, and hopefully when you get the job, when you are starting, in order to understand how to deal with chemicals or hazards in your work environment and how to access information about them. So here is a graphic that I found today that is WHMIS symbols from 2015. So a little bit old, but also fairly new compared to what is in your workbook, because they probably don't change too much. There may be things that are slightly different, but this gives us a general idea. And usually they're fairly, kind of the whole point is that you can understand from the image kind of what's going on. So the first one is a gas cylinder is what is inside of your symbol. So the classification is gas under pressure. So example of risks are materials which are normally gases can be kept in a pressured container, so it may explode if heated, punctured, or dropped. Examples of safe handling procedure: ensure the container is always secure, store in appropriate designated areas, do not drop or allow to fall, protect from mechanical damage. Our second hazard is flame. So this is meaning that it is flammable, pyrophoric, self-heating, in contact with water, emits flammable gases, self-reactive, or organic peroxide are all reasons why you might have the flame on your chemical. So the example of risks are materials which will continue to burn after being exposed to a flame or other ignition source. So may ignite if exposed to heat, sparks, friction, flames, or incompatible material. How to safely handle, store in properly designated areas. Keep away from heat, hot surfaces, sparks, open flames, and other ignition sources. Store in a well-ventilated, cool place. Then we have flame over a circle. So this is for oxidizer. So it's like the flame, but we have it on top of a circle. So this is materials which can cause other materials to burn or support combustion. So including oxidizing gases, liquid solids, may cause fire or explosion, may enhance the combustion of other materials. Store in areas away from combustibles in well-ventilated, cool place. Store in proper containers which will not rust or oxidize. Keep away from heat, hot surfaces, and sparks. Keep valves, fittings free from oil and grease. Then our fourth one is an exclamation mark. This one might look a little bit different. It looks different in your workbook, and so there may be things that are slightly different. And this is skin or eye irritant, sensitive, skin sensitizer, acute toxicity, narcotic effects, hazardous to the ozone layer. So poisonous materials which cause immediate and severe harm. Avoid breathing dust or vapors, avoid contact with skin or eyes, wear personal protective equipment, which is effective for exposure situation, work in well-ventilated areas, wash potentially exposed body parts thoroughly after handling. Then our fifth is health hazard. So we have a picture of an outline of a person that has a star in their center, sort of over their heart, indicating that they're kind of breaking up, I think, and being sick. So the classification is carcinogenicity, germ cell mutagenicity, reproductive toxicity, respiratory sensitization, specific target organ toxicity, and aspiration hazard. So these risks are materials which can cause or are suspected of causing serious long-term health effects, how to be safe, work in a well-ventilated area, store in appropriate designated areas, avoid direct contact, use personal protective equipment, obtain and learn special instructions, controls before use, avoid repeated and or prolonged exposure situations. Then we have some more which aren't all in the same in your workbook. So we have biohazardous infectious, so which is this, I don't know how to describe this image. A circle with kind of like 3 crescents overlapping it. So in the risks are infectious agents of or biological toxin causing serious disease or death, may cause anaphylactic shock, may include exposure to viruses, yeast, molds, bacteria, and parasites, which may cause disease in animals or humans. So the safe handling is to follow safe laboratory practices and procedures, avoid forming aerosols and breathing vapors, store in special designated areas with limited access and appropriate engineering controls, follow routine practices and universal precautions such as hand hygiene and glove use. Then we have corrosive, again, which is a slightly different image than in the household hazard ones. So here we have an image that looks like we have a piece of metal and we have a hand that both have test tubes dripping over top of it, and then it looks like a little explosion, or that it's corroding away on those surfaces. So it's corrosive to metals, can cause serious eye damage or severe skin burns. Risks, materials which react with metals and living tissue, skin, corrosive burns, serious eye damage, corrosive to metals again. And safe handling, use appropriate storage containers and ensure proper non-venting closures. Wear appropriate personal protective equipment, including respiratory protection, because you can breathe it in and it can burn your lungs. Then we have exploding bombs. We have explosives, which again looks very similar to the other explosives, a bit of a circle kind of bomb thing, and then everything busting out. So this can be described as self-reactive if it's severe, organic peroxide if it's severe and explosive. Materials which may explode due to reaction to fire, shock, friction, heat, puncture, or incompatible material. The safe handling is to handle with care, avoiding vibrations, shocks, and sudden temperature changes. Store in appropriate containers. Ensure storage containers are sealed and store and work in designated areas. Then we have our skull and crossbones again, which is acute toxicity, fatal or toxic. Materials which can cause toxicity or death even in small quantities. And safe handling is to avoid breathing fumes and vapors and skin contact, wear appropriate protective equipment, work in well-ventilated areas, follow manufacturer's use, handling, storage, and disposal instructions to prevent acute exposure and adverse health effects. So then we have, not all hazard classes and categories have pictograms. So there's some things that don't necessarily have a picture, but they still have a list of what the problem is. So you just need to read that, and you need to make sure that you're reading all the information about it. And then finally, an a newer one. It's not mandatory in terms of WHMIS, but there's an environment one where we have the image is a tree and looks like maybe some water with a dead fish in it. So this is aquatic toxicity and may be harmful to aquatic life or cause long-lasting effects to the aquatic environment. The safety handling is to use products according to directions, avoid release to the natural environment, dispose in accordance with all regulatory requirements and obligations. So overall, the safety handling is to wear personal protective equipment, to store things appropriately, to work in ventilated areas, pretty much that, and to follow the rules, follow the routines, make sure that you know the precautions and the practices. That kind of sums it all up. No matter what the hazards that you're dealing with, those are all probably good things to do. Okay, so prevention and protection. Accidents happen is what people often say, yet so-called accidents have real causes. Everything comes from somewhere. So what can we do to prevent them? The best way to protect against accidents is to prevent them from occurring. So prevent before dealing with them. Preventing accidents requires forethought, planning, and protection. The 3 best points at which to do this are at the hazard source, along the path to the worker, and at the worker by using safety equipment. So if we are preventing accidents at the hazard source, this means eliminating or minimizing the source of hazard is the best means of preventing accidents. It's also typically the most costly. So an example of control at the source is the use of systems of closed reaction vats in the chemical industry. The vats are used to carry out chemical reactions that may be dangerous or involve toxic or cancer-causing substances. Because the hazards are contained at source, no one is exposed. The reactants and products can also be dealt with in an environmentally responsible manner. Another example of controlling of the source is the use of soundproofing in high noise manufacturing environments. However, both of these are investments that the employer or the industry must do. And as probably we all know, that is not the most profitable way of making money. And so instead of investing in these measures that protect people, many companies don't. And it means that the employees are the people who end up paying with their health instead of the employers paying financially to keep them safe. So the second method is along the path. So the path controls are the second best means of preventing accidents, and they're typically less expensive than source controls. An example is the use of machine guards in the path of saws, cutting tools, and other moving machinery. The guards are placed physical barriers between the hazards and the workers, and they make it difficult for anyone to get hurt or killed. So here is an example on a bandsaw that leaves only enough space for the saw to be exposed when cutting work. So there's a wheel guard around the spinning wheel that powers the saw. There's a blade guard here and a blade guard here so that the blade isn't, it's gonna be really difficult to actually get cut. And then there's a wheel guard down here at the bottom. So that just shows some different ways that for one machine, that way that you can protect people along the path while using the thing that using the hazard. And then finally at the worker by using safety equipment. So personal safety equipment is typically the least costly way to prevent accidents. Such equipment includes protective footwear, gloves, clothing, hearing protection, and 5-point harnesses that prevent falls. This also includes safety glasses, face shields, helmets, and air purifying masks, and self-contained breathing apparatus. This equipment is designed to prevent physical injury or to prevent hazardous materials from entering the body. Such materials can get in via ingestion, inhalation, skin absorption, and puncture and wounds. Personal safety equipment is usually dependable. However, it is intended to be used only for short periods, and it also does not address the hazard at its source. For these reasons, it is considered the least effective way to prevent accidents, but it is probably the one that is most usually used because it is the cheapest for the employer. Often things like protective footwear or hearing protection are offloaded to the employee, that you have to buy your own steel-toe boots or bring your own earmuffs or things like that, or you're given a certain number of air purifying masks, and you have to use them for a certain period of time, and it may not be as effective as ideally. So these costs are often pushed from the employer to the employee yet again. Okay, so let's consolidate what we have learned today. So lesson 17, the highlights dealing with workplace hazards. So we talked about the biological, chemical, and physical types of hazards, so things to be aware of no matter where you are working. And we talked about how to minimize the risks, particularly understanding the labeling systems that are on all sorts of hazards, and respecting them. So not only seeing, oh, look, there's a hazard symbol, but knowing what it means and respecting them and acting accordingly to be safe. So these was the hazardous household product symbols, where there were 4: flammable, explosive, corrosive, and poison. And then the workplace hazardous material information system, which is WHMIS, where there was those 4, as well as a bunch more. But you don't have them all memorized. You don't have to have them memorized. You just need to recognize what they are and make sure that you're safe. And then we talked about prevention and protection, so that at the source is the best way to prevent the source of the hazard. If we are able to prevent accidents from happening at the source, that is the best, though it is the most costly. Along the path is less expensive but also less effective. And at the worker is the least expensive, but also the least effective. Though having a combination of 3 is probably the best protection for workers. All right, so hopefully with our success criteria, you can describe biological, chemical, and physical workplace hazards. And you can explain how to minimize risk both at home and at work. There are review questions for key questions on page 143, question 1 through 14. So those are where you should check out to see what work to submit. I hope that this was a useful lesson today. Again, we are getting close. This is lesson number, I don't even remember in this moment, 17, I think. And we have 23 lessons in total. So we have just another 6 lessons of new material to cover before the June 10th deadline and the end of the term. So please, if you're working on this course, reach out and connect with me. The number at the office is 807-737-1488. My extension is 2209, or you can also call us toll free at 1-800-667-3703. My email address is bronwyn.slate, just spelled BRONWYN.SLATE@nnec.owen.ca. My Facebook is bslate Wahsa. So you can connect with me there, or you can connect with me through YouTube at bslate Wahsa, where all of our lessons are recorded, have been recorded and uploaded there. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., though I teach the first and the last hour of the day, so that is not a good time to try to get a hold of me. If you miss me, leave me a message or send me an email, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I hope you have a lovely day and a lovely long weekend. Remember, we will see you again on Tuesday after the long weekend. Thanks so much for joining me. Mogwitch.